Hey guys, Travis here, going to do the second podcast for Earth-centric lighting. Today, I wanted to talk about all the technical aspects of lighting. Pick a category and dive in deep to that, but my wife suggested doing a episode on kitchen remodels, which is very smart of her because that's probably what 90% of the people want to hear anyways and could benefit from. So if you're a do-it-yourselfer and you're looking how to do the lighting in your space, this is for you. And also, if maybe you got a higher end home, also talk a little bit about that and how the lighting typically goes for that. But for kitchen lighting, this is a space you usually want a lot of light because you're doing various things that are task oriented. So it requires a lot of light to be able to like read ingredients on different things, cut and see if the food's ripe, you know, and cleaning afterwards. So it's nice to have the lighting right in there. And one of the things you can do or start to think about or learn about is the concept of layering. So when you layer, uh, you think about layering in a house, it's not just a shell. It has a floor, it has walls, it has a door, it has windows, it has a roof, and all those things come together to make a complete home. Lighting is very much the same way. If you just have one layer of light, it's going to be very bland. You're not going to have very much adjustability, especially in a kitchen. You want to be versatile, meaning you can adjust and change and do different things. So some of the layers, this is typically generically used uh, throughout the other spaces. It's not just specific to kitchens, but the layers are ambient lighting, task lighting, accent lighting, and then decorative usually goes into accent lighting, but sometimes you can break that out as its own category. But another layer nowadays is controls. If you want controls for your lights, so that way they turn on and off automatically, or you can override it with a push button, or maybe you want an occupancy sensor. So when you're going to the bathroom, it comes on automatically. Um, if you do all this all the right way, another layer I would include in there is health and wellness because you're creating a very healthy home because your light affects the way you feel uh, immensely. So if it's done right, it can make the space feel a lot better. And so if you're updating your kitchen and putting in new countertops and new backsplash, new flooring, it's gonna look like garbage if you don't do the lighting right because that's what affects how we see it, how we perceive those materials being put into there, those material finishes. If the lighting is off, it's going to look off in there. So, as I said before, it was a high uh, task-oriented area. One of the ways you can focus the task lighting is by identifying the spaces where you want, you know, brighter than average light, like probably in the room, the overall room in the kitchen you only need like 20-foot candles. There is a there's actually a free app right now called the IES Reference Ready app. If you don't want to spend like $900 on the book, the textbook is like huge and has all the recommended foot candles for lighting. But you can get that app and you can search spaces for recommended foot candles. And so you can double check me there, but I think it's like 20-foot candles in the kitchen. But then like the task areas, which would be your countertop, maybe your island, you'd want like 70 to 100-foot candles in there. And this differs by age because as we age, our eyesight starts to go, and so we need more light to fill in the room so we can see better. So like if you're 65 or older, you're gonna need more light. You probably want 150-foot candles on that task area and then if you're like 25 and really young, you don't need very much. You can see pretty good. You probably only need like 50-foot candles in a task plane area. So if you can identify in your kitchen which areas are task, which ones you want accent or decorative, um, and which ones are the ambient. Ambient light is the light that fills the space. Usually that's accomplished with downlights. And so I'll talk about the downlights here for a second. But before I do that, I will keep going through the layers because there's accent, there's task and there's decorative. So your task areas, as I mentioned, are the countertops. Your accent usually are maybe like there's some decorative pendants over the island. Maybe there's a decorative pendant over your sink. Uh, maybe you got a breakfast bar. You know, if you want something decorative there to match your other finishes. Um, Usually, I think I'm not dissing interior designers here at all. Interior designers are great with lighting, but I've noticed a lot of times they use decorative lighting for the task and they say there's enough lighting for task. Decorative lights are not always going to be a good choice for task lighting because they're so different and they only put out, they're omnidirectional usually, I mean they're like 360-degree lumen output. And so it's not focused, it's not getting enough lumens to the task plane, it's not targeted and focused. That's usually where downlight is handy, or maybe light strategically placed because then you can make sure you're getting enough light to that task area there. So you can still do the decorative lightings, but maybe you can mix it in with a little bit of extra uh, light to make sure that you're hitting that task area and getting those recommended foot candles because there's some really cool visualization programs out there, and I use them, and you can make them look bitchin' and make this uh, home look really cool on the rendering. But making it actually look that way in real life takes a lot of backside work of product research. You know, you're looking for the ceiling mounting type, making sure you're selecting the right product for that, IC rated type lights, and then optics, the different kind of optics, how high the ceiling is, and you're trying to pick it out correctly so that way you're getting all the right uh, the lighting that you want to achieve. And it takes a lot of usually a program that does foot candle calcs or photometrics so that way you can see it. Um, so uh, let's talk about then maybe how you would go about doing this. Like on the high-end homes that we do, um, we have a business, TK Lighting Design, where I design for pretty high-end custom homes, like a 10 or 20,000 square foot house, and there's a lot of detail in there. So usually, if we're doing a kitchen, there's probably 6 layers of light, sometimes 6 or 8, um, because they want it to look really good in there. If you're doing just a standard home, I would recommend at least uh, 3 to 4, maybe. That way you can kind of have a variation, and you can turn on, you know, some bright overhead lighting when you're um, wanting to be in there a lot, and then you have different options to make it a little nicer in there when you're not wanting all that bright overhead lighting. So the ambient lighting, when you go to pick it out, maybe that's with downlights. Um, oh, in the ceiling, you want to look and see if your ceiling is drywall. Is it wood? Because that usually affects if you're doing a trimless downlight. If you're doing a trimmed downlight, usually those can fit in both drywall and wood ceilings. And then you want to check and see if it's a flat ceiling or if it's sloped, because you want a sloped ceiling downlight, or you want something that is adjustable, something that you can aim downwards towards the area that you're trying to illuminate. Uh, so that's something to consider. And then I know in the box stores, they sell quite a bit of these wafer lights where the light is just this disc, and they're very cheap, which is nice if you're not looking to do very much. But I've seen these get put in like $4 million homes in the kitchen where maybe they have a 20-foot ceiling and they're wondering why there's no lighting. It's because there's no optics for it. So you lose 90% of that light output within the first 3 feet that leaves that fixture. So they're not good for high ceilings. They're also not very good for low ceilings because they have no shield for the light source. So it's what you'd call a glare bomb, and you don't usually want that on a low ceiling because that's where it's right in your peripherals and it's going to cause headaches and discomfort. You want the light to leave the downlight and not see the light source unless you're standing directly underneath it and looking up. Something I would recommend is American Lighting has, and I'm not affiliated with them, but I use them a lot for design. Um, you can go to their website and look it up. They have what's called the Rime downlights, which is a newer product. They have it in round and square, and you buy um, You buy one uh, part number. It's called nomenclature, where you build it all out. And I apologize, you guys, I'm sick here. So if you can hear it in my voice, that's what it is. Um, but there's four different options for these different part numbers. And it comes with three different optics. So if your optics don't work, you can change them out in the field, which is nice. It also comes with a honeycomb louver, and this honeycomb louver helps out so you're not seeing that light source, but light still goes out through. If you don't want it, you don't have to use it because it will take away some of the lumens when you use it. But if you like that look, you can keep it in there. And the light source is also tucked back up into the ceiling, so it's concealed, which is nice. And I believe it is canvas. If you hop on their website, American Lighting's website, you probably see the Chroma DMX 4-inch. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, I would not do that unless you have experience with lighting controls or some type of experience in engineering, because that is like a DMX system. It's like a 512 channel. And usually we partner up with custom integrators to help make that work for controls, because it's also color changing and tunable white. And tunable white means your downlights change to mimic the sunlight from like an 1800 Kelvin, like a warm sunset, all the way up to like a 6500 Kelvin. Some manufacturers go up to 10,000, so it's a real white, almost like a moonlight, which is really good for your body for circadian rhythm and those type of things. But if you don't want to do that because those systems are really expensive, I would recommend just doing a static white and something where the glare is gone and you're not having to deal with that glare, because that will help out immensely. And then you pick your color temperature of what you want uh, based on how you want to feel, because like a 5000K is going to make you more awake and alert, and a 3000K is going to make it feel calmer and warmer in there. 3000K also complements like the woods, the browns and the reds real well, and like a 5000K would really complement the grays and the blues, make them pop a little bit more. If you swap it around, it will look different. That's a good point too. So if you have all 3000K downlights in your house and you have a gray wall and then like a brown wall right next to each other, the the 3000K color temperature is going to look different on those two walls if you're highlighting the wall. It will stand out if it's just like a center punch, but that's a whole another topic on color and finishes. So if we're doing the ambient downlight, and there's lots of other manufacturers you can choose. Nora Lighting has some countless downlights which are really good. There's Juno Lighting. Um, there's also Halo Lighting. Uh, I'm a fan of American because I know this downlight is priced very affordably and has the most options for what you can do, and kind of changing it out in the field, which is really nice. Let's see. So if you're doing the ambient downlighting and say you select a downlight that you like, that you think this is going to do good, you also want to look for IC rating, because I guarantee you in your house, you're going to have insulation in the ceiling. You want to make sure that downlight is IC rated. If you're doing it like an apartment, you need to make sure it's fire rated. Um, but the reason why I say IC rated is because sometimes these downlights, they say IC rated on the spec sheet, but then if you select their higher lumen package, like a 2000 lumen, it no longer has its IC rating. It's usually at a certain lumen output because that fixture gets hot and it loses its rating. So the lower lumens makes it so it doesn't get so hot. And then so you pick out your downlight, let's say, and then how do you space it or lay it out? Well, what you really want to look for is if the manufacturer has a spacing criteria, which most good manufacturers do, and this is usually in the photometric report, or it's in the bottom, like the last pages of the spec sheet, where you kind of see this little um, web thing that's saying what the light's doing. But it usually has an SC, and that means spacing criteria. It's like 1.2, 0.8, 0.66. What that is that's a uh, telling you is you take that number how tall your ceiling is, and that's how far apart you can space the fixtures without creating a light gap. So let's say if you pick out a downlight and it has a spacing criteria of 0.8, and you have a 10-foot ceiling, and so you want to space these no further than 8 feet apart. So if you space it further than 8 feet, you're going to have gaps in the light on the ground. And so if you're looking for uniformity, you obviously want to avoid that. So let's say you have a 20-foot uh, long ceiling in there, or 20-foot open space to illuminate. You usually take that 20 foot and divide it by the number of fixtures you want to use. So let's say 4, and that equals 5. So you space your fixtures out 5 feet apart. And that also makes it so you're 3 feet under that spacing criteria. So it's going to be illuminated very nice and very even. And then when you get to the side walls, you take 5 and divide it by 2. So you get 2.5, 2.5 feet spacing from the last fixture to the wall. And you do the same thing on the width as well. So maybe your width is only 10 feet. So in that case, you only probably need two columns, or excuse me, two rows. So it would be 10 divided by 2, and you get that 5 foot spacing again, and then again 2.5 feet from the end of the open space. And that will help give you an even illumination within that space. And this is a good way to get your ambient light for that space. And then you identify the task areas. Let's say it's your kitchen countertop as a task area. One of the good ways to do that, and we do this on our drawings, we have a general detail sheet that shows ways of how to install the tape light and channel. Usually you can do under cabinet lighting too, but I am a fan of the tape light because it's so low profile. It is a bit more work because you're taking a channel and a tape and putting it all together, and you're cutting it, usually the channel, and sometimes cutting the tape as well too, usually cutting the tape. And you add connectors, and that tape goes to a driver, and that driver is usually like a 24-volt output, and then it's a 120-volt input. So you got to find a spot to mount that driver where it's accessible and run 120-volt to it, and then you run low voltage to the tape. And there's lots of different tape lights out there. American Lighting has really good stuff that's very affordable. Uh, and but when you look at it under counter lighting, you usually don't want, like, they have 1,000 foot per foot lumen tape lights. You don't want that in under counter lighting. You want something more like maybe 400-foot candles per foot, um, because the 1,000 foot 1,000 lumens per foot is more for like a high ceiling if you're doing like a custom line of light in the ceiling and you're doing multiple of those. I know this podcast, you can't probably see me unless I upload it. One of these programs, or one of these platforms uploads the video as well, but you can see I got an image in the background here of lines of light in the ceiling. You can kind of see what that looks like, but some of you can probably imagine it pretty well. But so when you go to do that under counter tape lighting, they have different channels. They have adjustable channels, they have slim channels, they have 45-degree channels. I like using the 45-degree. I don't place it back against the backsplash and shine it out. What I do is I take that 45-degree and we place it up front of the cabinet, and it's usually 3/4 inches deep. So then we ask the cabinet manufacturer to do a 3/4 inch deep reveal so that channel and tape light hides right behind it, and you shine it right back on the backsplash and the countertop, and it looks really nice that way. You can also route it in. If you get a flat surface mount one, you can use a router and mark it out and how deep it is, and route that in and do a flat channel and recess it up in so it's flat, flush. And that still I would put more towards the front, probably like 6 inches towards the front. Um, and because think about it, if you could mount it closer to the backsplash, but if you do and you have a very glossy backsplash, you're going to get glare from that light source. It's going to really you're going to see the light source just popping out. So if it's kind of pushed back farther away towards the front, that will help out with that, with both the flush mount, surface mount, or the 45-degree channel as well. So then that's your ambient and your task. And then so another task would be, I would say there's more than one task over the island. You could do, if it's a really high ceiling, I would do recessed multiples with like an 18-degree beam. I'm talking like 20, 30-foot ceiling heights here, which some of those we do. If it's really low, you can just do like a canvas type downlight that's 1200 lumens. Or they make some of them now where it's like a canvas downlight and they sell like a multiple recess trim and you put a couple of them in there so it looks like a recess multiple. What those are is they're like two downlights stacked side by side. Sometimes there's three. And then you're getting a lot of light over that island so you can and see what you're doing there, which is really nice. And then you want these all on separate switches so that way, they're not coming off and on at the same time. That's where controls are really handy because then you don't have to go through and hit all the switches, or you don't have like six switches on your kitchen wall. It's usually, if it's a nice control system, it's one switch location and it's like a four button setup, which it looks a lot nicer, especially if you're, putting a lot of money towards a custom home. Uh, it's kind of like you're eliminating the wall acme and making it look really nice and clean. And usually that's that custom integrator that helps us out. Uh, where was I going to? I kind of went off on a tangent there. Let's see. We did the ambient lighting, the task lighting. That's right. Accent lighting, and I'll just talk about like the decorative lights. Usually you do those over the island, or maybe the breakfast bar, and that's usually pendants. Um, some people like, and buying decorative lights as a whole other thing is usually personal preference. That's why I say you want to light it, your ambient task with the downlights, maybe the tape light, where you want enough light, and then you add in the decorative lighting for looks because that's all it's really there for. Unless you're picking out a specific decorative downlight that has high output and is like punching light down with a certain beam angle, then that would help out. But other than that, if they're just decorative, cool looking, they don't do very much tasks. They're more for your personal preference and looks. And over an island, you could do something linear. That's the length of the island. You could do mini pendants. You could, um, if you want to look at what I'm talking about for linear pendant or mini pendants, you could look at WAC lighting and click on their products, and you'll see it will say mini pendants or chandelier or linear pendants, and you can kind of see. But like, you don't want to put a big chandelier over your kitchen island. You want something more low profile, so maybe you can it feels more open in there. That's why the mini pendants are helpful. And depending on the length of your island, odd numbers usually look better. So like three or five instead of like four of them or two of them. Um, maybe if you want, you could do five of them and stagger them. I think that would look pretty cool if you want something to stand out. Or maybe when you're picking out your decorative, lights, you pick out something with a gold finish if you have gold. Maybe if you have black cabinets and then gold on the handles, I think that would look really nice. Um, Obviously, they come in lots of different finishes, lots of different styles. So usually, when we do a lighting design, we pick out and specify all the task and ambient downlighting and the accent ones that are more specific. But when it's like a decorative pendant light, we say that's to be determined by the owner or interior designer because that's usually, yeah, my taste is very different than your taste. Let's just say that. I think that's pretty true to everybody. And that's where the interior designers really accelerate because if you tell them your preferences and what you want, they're gonna, make it uh, look really nicely compared for your finishes and all that stuff. That's why usually a lot of times we you work together um, and make it work as a team because that's very, very helpful if everybody can work together. But if you're a do-it-yourselfer, obviously you're doing this all yourself and you're probably going to draw it on a piece of paper and lay out your lights, which is totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. I've done that before. Sometimes that's just what you got to do. But so that's the decorative lighting, maybe some other accent lighting that you want. So you want like a nighttime light, something that's not super bright because I know I talk about this a lot because I really want to nail it in. When you turn on bright overhead lights, it just crushes our melatonin production in it. it wakes you back up. So if you have lights that's mounted 4 foot or lower and low output, it doesn't wake your body back up, and you can still see what you're doing if you want to sneak in and get a snack late night. Oh, shame on you, right? I think we've all done that, but it's pretty helpful. One of the ways you can do that again is tape light on the toe kick. So your where your kitchen countertop goes down below underneath the cabinetry, there's usually a little notch there. You can do tape light under there, and I wouldn't do a 400 lumen output like I was saying for the kitchen countertop. I would just find something that's more 150 lumen, 200 lumens. It doesn't need to be very much because you're just creating a glow on the path. And nowadays, it's really cool. They've come out with these LED sheets, excuse me, these LED sheets that you can put actually if your island countertop or your kitchen countertop is translucent. And that doesn't mean, maybe I'm using the wrong word there. Uh, uh, it doesn't have to be clear, but some of the solid ones, you can actually shine a light on the backside of it and the light glows. So you put these LED sheets, I'm sure any countertop guy would know. Um, but you put the LED sheets under there and you space it off. So it's not on top of the LEDs, usually these little bumpers. Sometimes the LED sheets should come with those. But it's very much like the tape light where there's a certain amount that you use and it fits on a driver. Maybe there's 96 watts in the sheets, and those are two sheets. Those two sheets would be powered by one 96-watt driver. And if you wanted more sheets, you'd have to add another driver. And you're running 120 volt to that driver and 24 volt to those LED sheets. But then you can make your kitchen countertop glow at night, which is a really cool feature. Um, let's see, I think for the do-it-yourselfers, I think that kind of ties it up. For doing a high-end custom home, uh, they're wanting a lot more usually for the lighting, and there's a lot more going on. Maybe there's art on the wall that's being highlighted. Usually, sometimes if you want, they got those cool beams or wood ceiling. They want the ceiling illuminated. Well, downlights aren't going to do that. So you need to do something indirect, like an uplighting with an asymmetric throw, something that's going to highlight the ceiling. And a lot of times I've had it where they want it evenly, so you got to look for something that's with a really wide throw that's going to illuminate that ceiling evenly. Or if you just want a little highlight, maybe you can even accomplish that with a pendant that has some uplight. You're just highlighting a certain area, which is kind of cool too. Uh, but yeah, I hope that gives you guys some good advice. And if you got a project that you're looking to do, and you want help on it, you want a design, reach out to our TK Lion Design Company, and you can Google us www.tkliondesign.com, or you can email me too anytime, and all the contact info is on there as well too. But I hope that helped out, and I hope you guys got some good information here for how to light your kitchen if you're doing a remodel and you're a do-it-yourselfer. All right. Talk to you guys on the next time.